Hi guys, welcome back to Chess Matthew. So on this video, we'll tackle about how to destroy the English opening. So the set opening start with the moves of c4 and whichever the black plays here, and we will enter now the so-called English opening after c4. So here we will flip the board and we will try to destroy the English opening. For example, after c4 of white, here as black will play the move knight f6 to control the square and to stop any further push of this pawn to e4. And again, after knight c3, we will simply play g6 to develop our bishop here to control the dark square on this diagonal, and later on we can castle immediately on the king side. And after, the white here will play g3 as a common move for the English player, in which he will try to put his bishop on this left square and to control this left square on the board on this long diagonal from h1 to a8, in which later on he can actually start an attack, for example after queenside attack with these pawns, and tries to release some attack to this diagonal, and again pressurizing this pawn on b7. But for example, after bishop g7 and bishop g2 for the white, here as black will play first d6 to try to have some control on this e5 before we castle on the king side. Because after this d6, it actually opens up some lines for the left square bishop, so that later on we can have an immediate attack on the king side. For example, if the white here will immediately develop his knight to f3 and castle, for example. But here after d6, if the black plays e3, he tries to open up some diagonal for his queen and controlling the d4, and trying to have some square for his knight on g1 to the e2 square. But here we will simply castle on the king side to put our king into safety. And if the white here plays knight g to e2, developing his knight on the square and trying to control this dark square on the board and vacating the square, so that the white king here can castle now on the king side. But we will play here a simple trick, in which we shall see in this position now that after knight g to e2, the white king here can immediately castle now on the king side. And again, with this bishop that actually controlling this diagonal, it actually stopped our left square bishop here to develop, because it was actually defending the b7 pawn. But it doesn't matter here, and we simply play bishop to g4, trying to trap now the white pieces here. For example, after bishop to g4, because it is very simple that he leaves some defense to the b7, and the white here can actually immediately grab that pawn and win some material with extra pawn. But this is actually a trap for the black, because after knight bd7 and bishop takes a8, and after queen takes a8, we shall see in this position now that the black here is actually a piece down, but it actually attacks now the rook on the h1. And for example, if the white here plays rook to g1 to escape his rook from the attack of this queen, but there is simple knight to e5 with a threat to have a check on d3, or even to knight to f3. And after d4, trying to attack our knight, but again, after the white here defend the check on d3, but there is another square to our knight on e5 that gives a check, and it is the f3. And after knight f3 check, the white king here was actually forced to play king f1, and after king f1, there is bishop h3 check. Again, the only move that the white here can do is to cover the check. But after bishop takes g2, giving a check, king takes knight h4, again giving a check. And for example, if the white here plays king h3, but there is simple queen c8 check, and the only move here that the white here can do is to capture this knight, or even to uh, cover the check. But whichever the move will be played, for example, if the white here just cover the check, but again there's a first mate after, for example, g4, queen takes g4, checkmate, because this queen was actually supported by our knight. And even though, for example, in this position the white here captured this knight, but still there is a checkmate. So going back, for example, after c4, knight f6, knight c3, g6, g3, bishop d7, g2, d6, e3, kingside castling, knight g2, e2, bishop to g4, and if the white here grab that pawn, but there is a simple knight b to d2, trying to sacrifice our rook, in which after queen takes e8, there is an attack to the rook of white on h1, and after rook g1, knight d5 with a threatening to have a check on the d3 and f3 square. And after d4, for example, there is knight f3, king f1, bishop h3 check, rook g2, bishop takes, and everything was actually forced up there, for example, with the move knight h4 check. And even though the black here actually goes to king f1, for example, if he doesn't play king h3, but still it is the same after king f1, because there is g2, and after king e1 there is knight f3, checkmate. So again, going back, for example, on this position after knight to e5, in which the white here actually plays d4. Let's say, for example, if the white here played another move, which is e4, trying to cover now the diagonal from the attack of the queen on a8, but there is simple knight e3. So by giving a check with the knight, the king was forced to play king f1. But after bishop h3, again the white here was forced to cover the check with rook g2, and after knight takes to e4, again trying to have some tricks. For example, after this knight will capture this pawn and opening some diagonal with a mate. And if the white here grab that knight, but there is queen takes e4, and after knight c3 attacking the queen, but there is queen takes g2, and after king to e2, knight takes f2 attacking the queen, and again after queen c2, but there is knight d1 discover check. And if the white here will grab that knight, then there is checkmate. So if the white here goes for an escape after king d3, but there is queen f3, checkmate. So going back again one more time after c4, knight f6, knight c3, g6, g3, and bishop d7, bishop g2, d6, and after e3, kingside castling, knight ge2, bishop g4. It seems like the white here actually wins some material after bishop takes b7, knight bd2, and bishop takes a8. But after queen takes to a8, the white here is actually winning, because after some couple of moves after rook g2 and knight to e5, everything on this position was actually forced for the white, and the black here has a huge winning chances on this position. So that's all. I hope you enjoyed this video, and please don't forget to subscribe.